Hello, everyone. This is Ketchi1383 with Ketchi Gaming, and this is Volume 4 of my coverage of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess Manga. Last time, we left off with Link defeating King Bulbin and rescuing Colin, then heading off to Death Mountain. Just like when Link headed into the forest, bringing the monkey with him, he heads into Death Mountain with a different sidekick in tow other than Minda. He brings the shaman's daughter, Luda, with him this time around, and she also gives him the hero bow, skipping the whole entire part where you find it in the dungeon. And just like in the game, the Gorons attack Link, but this time, Link willingly brings a child along to put her in danger. But instead of doing it to keep them out of harm, which seems like an oxymoron considering they ram Link with their big, huge, rock hard bodies. They are aggressive towards humans because the villagers of Kakariko Village went to mine there, and they ended up digging on some sacred ground, thus angering the Gorons. I can't help but feel like there's some weird environmental tribal message there that it's so brief, it's irrelevant, but it's there. Moving on from that, the manga does make an attempt to sort of stick to some plot elements when it comes to Death Mountain, like the sumo match between Link and the Elder Goron, except they didn't even bother with going to the mayor and getting the iron boots and doing the sumo wrestling match with him. They kind of went with a quick and dirty path with it, altering the story completely, with Minda doing the heavy lifting, so to speak, of sumo wrestling with the Gorons for Link. Similar to the Forest Temple, there really isn't much of a temple in the manga. It's actually just a handful of pages. Well, first one being the explanation of what happened to Darbus, the patriarch of the Goron tribe. Although they altered it just a little bit, they had another Goron called Darab touch it, which resulted in him turning into a shadow beast, in which Darbus then fought him and was also consumed by it. And that's when they imprisoned, I guess, the Darab beast, otherwise known as Phyrus in the game. To illustrate my point of there actually not being a dungeon in the manga, you can see in this panel or section of the book that more or less that's it. They just enter and there is no real dungeon. They're just at the boss right off the bat. No enemies, no puzzles, which I don't expect them to because I don't know how you would do puzzles in a manga. It probably has been done, but doing a Legend of Zelda puzzle in a manga would probably just take a lot of pages and be super boring, on top of taking a really long time to do. So I'm not going to blame them or hold a candle to the author and illustrator's feet because they didn't add a whole bunch of puzzles to the manga. Although I am going to do a little bit of chastising again by pointing out he brought a child into a very dangerous situation involving a creature infused with dark magic that's walking and on fire at the same time. So the fight with Phyrus is actually somewhat close, at least for the start of the fight, to that of the manga, with Phyrus breaking free and attacking Link and Luda. I guess just Link in the case of the game. Now, the fight itself is not the same, and I don't expect it to. It follows a similar sort of thought path of that of the game, with Link using the hero's bow on Virus to shoot it in its nice glowy bit on its forehead there, which is actually an eye. I jokingly call it a glowy bit, but in the manga, it's an eye for sure. Unlike the game, just one shot and he defeats Virus, returning the Gorons back to normal. Very anticlimactic and very brief. I did skip a few pages, Like where Fyrus goes nuts and goes after Luda because she's human, and the whole entire "I hate humans" thing for mining in our sacred ground kind of played into it. But it still had the same result of Link just shooting it once in the eye on its forehead and defeating the boss. Now, the author did adhere to even loosely adapting parts of the game to it. Sometimes he just made stuff up altogether. Like these pages involving Minda taking on Zant, which, spoiler warning, you weren't supposed to know what Minda looked like until the end, but I guess he just didn't care because reasons. Moving on, and just like before, the author alters things just a little bit here, particularly when it comes to Shad and Telma a little bit there. Shad is now a author, a very much unsuccessful one, writing multiple books that just don't sell well because no one cares about the subject matter. Now there is a couple of panels that involve Ilya not remembering anything and the doctor coming in to examine her. It really doesn't add anything. It's just something he added to the manga for whatever reason. With that, we get to a point in which Link goes into Lake Hylia / Castletown and starts to free it from the Twilight realm. Except it takes a bit of a detour where Link finds Prince Rayless and takes him all the way into Castletown, sort of explaining how he got into Castletown, or sort of retroactively fixing how he got there in the game. Sort of, because it's not really in game canon. That it doesn't really matter how he got there personally. But it covers events of Ilya finding him outside the inn, like they sort of talked about in the game. Now, that kitten that Ilya tried to save actually lived and is now used to move the plot forward, telling Link where to go and what to do in terms of his journey to free Castletown and Lake Hylia of the influence of the Twilight Realm. Duplicating the scene in Zora's Fountain where all of them are frozen. And unfortunately, I guess I wasn't recording that little bit, otherwise, I'd use that footage, but I have them thawed out and gasping for breath after having been frozen in their fountain for who knows how long. Several events in the game were combined into one long event in the manga, like thawing out the Zora and killing the big old bad spirit bug in order to free the area of the Twilight. That includes actually meeting the Zora Queen, who was killed by Zant, and helping out her son as well as the rest of the Zora. With Lanayru being restored and Twilight being lifted from the area, Link wastes zero time heading all the way back to Castletown in his excitement to talk to Ilya. Upon approaching her, Shad white knights for her because, well, he wants to get in her pants, frankly. But also, she doesn't remember Link at all. And Telma takes him off to the side and tells him she doesn't remember anything. Not a complete departure, but things were definitely altered. Which all those events lead to Link escorting the wagon all the way to Kakariko Village to see Renato in order to heal Prince Ralis, including the scene where she winks at him and makes a kissing face at him, which I guess left an impression on the author because he did the exact same thing. So the next several pages are actually dedicated to Link duking it out with the various forces of Ganon, skipping out on the, what is it, third fight with King Bulbin? It's kind of hard to remember at this point in time. But he does produce an image of a I guess, skeletal hound, kind of a grossy, fleshy thing. Like, this manga is not afraid to go into the gory, bloody imagery. With that, though, you kind of get to see why he focused so much on this particular section of game, and it's because he alters events again. With a bokoblin going up to Ilya, saying they weren't actually after the wagon, they were after Ilya, which then results in Ilya regaining her memory out in the middle of Hyrule Field instead of in Kakariko Village. Completely out of place from where it is in the game and much earlier. The journey does end with the Zora Prince being healed by the shaman in Kakariko Village. And just like the game, Link gets his Zora water breathing armor as well. This leads almost like immediately going into Lake Hylia. Yes, there are two dungeons in this one volume where they do the whole entire dungeon in just a few panels. And again, Link involves a child going into a dangerous situation. I mean, I guess this time around, the parents are dead, so, consequences be damned. And just like before, there's no dungeon exploring at all. It's just all boss, and it's done in a couple of pages. Doesn't really take all that long. I mean, the only real noticeable difference here is Link put a child in danger, which I already mentioned. But I'm gonna put a little bit more of an emphasis on it because he's royalty, and I know I said his parents are already dead, but he has a whole entire kingdom of subjects that might not be so happy about that. And just like every other old 3D Zelda game, he aims for its big squishy eye, which is also its weak spot, resulting in its instant death and Minda getting the fused shadow she's after. Very similar to the manga, nothing really deviates from there. And it ends in a very similar fashion to that of the game, with Zant taking over Lenebru and causing Minda to, I guess, die. I'm not entirely sure what's happening here, other than that she's being a Twilight exposed to a lot of light, and I'm guessing she's dying slowly. But the manga just actually ends when Zant just appears right behind them. Anyways, that's volume four. They definitely compressed a lot of events all in together. It's just all smashed in there. Ilya regaining her memory, adding some stuff in there, like how Prince Raylis got all the way to Castle Town. I mean, it kind of like in a weird way feels like Heavy Rain, where you watched or played events, but then when they retold the events, they added to it later so that the private eye was actually the killer doing things that you actually didn't do. It's like ugh. A complete and total disconnect in the events of the game and the manga. And I know it kind of lends itself to expanding upon or even maybe just creating parts because let's face it, there's not a lot of dialogue going on in Twilight Princess, particularly when it comes to Link and all the other characters. I mean, they'll talk at him, but he doesn't talk with them in any capacity. But I digress. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Have a good one.